Go through, in preparation for Wednesday, we'll go through this, the questions and answers. We haven't gotten to that part yet, and we've asked some of the community to do that. So let me hand this out. Can I hand out some to other people?
You can if you want, sure.
What I'd like everybody to do is write draft on the top. I just didn't have draft on this.
Yeah, we'll write draft.
Okay.
No problem. Guys, do you have this? Do you have it?
Somebody wants a copy?
If you want to put those over here or just pass them around, people can grab copies out of it.
Oh, wait a second. You gotta give me.
What do you need?
Somebody just handed me this, and this is.
We have one more copy back, actually. We need a copy of this back here. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure what the correct story is.
Well, let's go through what yours are, and then
okay. So
if there's members of the public want to comment also, they can bring that up.
So what we basically did is we took the sheet we took the master term sheet that's been all over the place, and we broke it down into a resolution.
Master term sheet is.
The master term sheet was the community spent all summer coming up with their needs and their wants having to do with Cornell, and broke it down into issues. The issues of development, transportation, facilities, education, and then the softer programming issues that the community needs, and also what to do with the STEAM plan. That's kind of a sore spot on the island. It's a beautiful old building that's very toxic, that it serves that gives energy to Kohler and Goldwater Hospital and to the Aristides and the parking garage, and it uses number 7 oil, and it's toxic, number 6 oil, and it's toxic and needs to be mitigated. And it seems to us like a perfect, we're not asking Cornell to spend their money on it. We're asking Cornell to look at it and spend their expertise on it, so that they could figure out some way of making it into a profitable enterprise for somebody.
And that's covered in your here, right?
So it's covered in our term sheet.
So let's sorry. Let's start. Maybe let's just work our way through it.
Okay. So what we did is we kind of ran a little bit randomly. So we need to put this in better order. But we a little bit randomly took our justifications for the term sheets for the requests, and we put them into whereases. Okay. And then we put all our requests underneath that. And then what we did is, because Cornell was so good as to give us an answer to the soft request for programming, we have a letter from Cornell that we added in as our as part of our resolution.
And they made a request that this be made part of the record, and certainly we will do that, since they've taken the time to respond to this with this letter, so we can go into that. I mean, Ellen, it's the best thing to do here to work through the whereases provide sort of a framework of what we're looking at.
Why we're asking.
Do you want to go? Do we want? Let's go ahead and go through.
Okay, so we can go for the record. We can go through it.
Yep.
Okay, so do you want me to read them out, or do?
Yeah, let's. Well, I can.
Okay, so whereas Cornell constructed a university on the property that was previously Goldwater Hospital. And whereas the City of New York has determined it's unfeasible to continue operating Goldwater Hospital. And whereas we already have an existing community here with approximately 14,000 residents who are, I'm paraphrasing,
Sure, no, that's
who are
fine. Go ahead.
vulnerable, to the noise and the pollution and the demolition that will be happening for the next 25 years, on and off for the next 25 years. And whereas New York City's tax base does not provide our local services,
Right.
in fact, our local services get provided by our ground rents, and whereas, and not by, and mostly not by grants from New York State, but from our ground rent. And whereas the development will impact the local schools, leading to overcrowding and diminished learning, and we already have a D-level school on the island we really need help with. And whereas the development site in their DEIS contains a quarry that has flow ash in it, which is a highly carcinogenic substance, as well as the hazardous materials in Goldwater Hospital that needs to be considered when demolishing the hospital. And whereas the community's current state of air quality is significantly bad because of its proximity to the power plant and to the bridge, so it's already bad. We're very concerned about the additional impacts of that air quality, on the demolition and the construction, and the trucking, the diesel trucks going by our windows down Main Street, our only street, so there's no way that the trucks can take alternate routes. Whereas the community is encircled by the East River, and therefore our recreational facilities are limited in space and even further diminished because New York City itself has reduced rental space for recreational use. So New York City folks come over here and use art space, thereby making it less available
right.
for us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, whereas the existing community was constructed specifically to provide a safe haven for the elderly and the disabled, as well as families, and because of this mandate has a higher than normal population of disabled, elderly, and children. Therefore, we resolve that Cornell Technion may build this project under the following conditions.
Can I talk to somebody?
Would you like to? Sure. I think we should go through the whereases first, and then you can.
Did you want to speak to some of the whereases?
Yeah, I think if any of these, and some of these are already included in the report that I've written, are added, I think we have to make sure that what we're saying is accurate, and the board should not. I think the city's tax base provides the local service, does not provide the local services of transportation, policing, cleaning, repairs, and maintenance. That's true for the most part, the residential portion of the island, but a lot of the other facilities still receive services and funding from the city, so I think we have to be careful there. I don't believe.
Can you explain that?
Well, there's an implication that the entire island, but Kohler and Goldwater now get some of their services through the city. So, and they have the bus service, which is also the 102 bus is a state thing. I actually don't agree with the statement that the development's impact on the local schools will lead to overcrowding. I think the information in the EIS is fairly well documented, and that the schools are adequate enough to handle the small amount of children that would be generated by the project. I think the next to last whereas, if one actually took the island by itself, the open space per capita ratio as compared to other parts of the city would be higher than most other community districts. And so I think that needs to be reworked if we're going to talk about open space.
Where are you looking at that?
It's the next to the last whereas.
Yeah, it's this idea that you're talking about that the facilities are limited. All right, so it's right. It's right.
We are actually so, as I was pointing out, we're so blessed here that people.
We have good recreational facilities. We can't use them. We can't use them because everybody else is using them.
But that's not a. But that's a REAC issue. That's not a. I don't believe that's an issue for Cornell. Our facilities are so popular that they are used by to a large extent. I don't know what the percentage is by off-island people, and I think it's become a regional resource. But I don't think that the addition, Cornell's, the fact that we're surrounded by a water limit. If you want to say that because we're so popular here, it limits the use of the island's facilities by the residents, that sounds a little better to me. I'm not sure I would still go for it, but those are.
I mean, you can certainly put language in there that says to either to retain or to have access to recreational facilities for the use by the residents. I mean, that you could put some language in there. Because I mean, a reasonable concern would be that you'll have people coming in from who's going to school,
right.
And all of a sudden there's stuff here that people will want to use, and then the residents won't be able to use it. This is a reasonable concern. I think if I'm a resident here, I certainly would have that concern. So that's language. That's right. That's
okay.
language.
So it just needs to.
So that language, we can work that language, Helen. I think we can come up there something that would be, protect and make the point that the recreational facilities here are important to the residents. We want to make sure that those types of things are protected and that people will who live here have access to that. So that that's
okay. I mean, honestly, this can become a big flash, causing dissension between the community and Cornell really easily. I mean, you saw what happened with the arrest of one of our residents who, because they didn't move off the softball field fast enough and the soccer field fast enough because and somebody was arrested because of it. 15 minutes of not leaving the soccer field, and public safety walked them off.
I think there's a discussion
really,
about that's not a good incident to use.
Well, it was a serious incident because it shows what happens when there's a limited amount of space that everybody wants to use, and then people are fighting for it. And if you put Cornell in there and you get a Cornell softball team that wants to use the same field that the soccer team wants to use,
But I think we can run. I think it's agreed. We don't have to go back and forth on that. I think we're all in agreement that we can run.
The fields at Central Park, the use of those fields are not limited to the people who live abutting the park.
We don't have an agitated public safety arrest.
So I mean, I think there's more than.
I know. I got the point. I'll rewrite it.
Okay. So let's go right down to what your conditions are and what you're asking, right? What the group is asking for. We can go and then we can go through the comments or the response in this letter that Cornell gave, right? Is that
yes.
Sound fine? So we're talking about the first issue, which is expanded policing, transportation, and maintenance for the community, in keeping with the added population that the development creates. Is that? And I think that that's certainly a fair request in that you're talking about more people coming onto the island. So there's obviously going to be security issues that you're concerned about, right? So that that's something that is important to be addressed. Issue of transportation and maintenance. Again, I don't think these are unfair. Certainly, these are very fair requests. I'm okay with that language. Does anybody see any issues there?
question of degree, because Cornell's certainly going to have their own security people and so on. They're going to take care of their campus. And the question is how much more should they be contributing to the transportation and the policing, on the island. Certainly,
Well,
the idea of the bus, I think if they're going to be using it, they should contribute to it. But I don't know about the policing.
I guess
they're going to have their own policing.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. I guess though, if I'm a resident though, I'm thinking, all right, so there's going to be an expanded population of people coming in here and onto Roosevelt Island. What sort of security issues does that bring up? I don't know the answer to that, but it seems to me you are changing, sort of fundamentally changing the number of people that come here, and you're going to have different people that are coming in. And I'm sure the students and the faculty will be fine, but we don't know what sort of security elements that sort of represents. So what has to be done in terms of dealing with security for the whole island? I don't know the answer to that. So anyway, I think you could say that there are, security issues that are going to be raised by this, and so I think the request could be that there should be adequate policing, to deal with this. I don't know. That would be my kind of view on it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, completely agree. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what our justification is. We believe that they're not going to. Unlike Goldwater Hospital, where people, most of the residents stay in the hospital, and most of the workers go through the hospital. They work their 12-hour shifts and they go home. Cornell, people are in and out. I mean, it's a university. People walk around. They don't limit themselves. So they walk around, they go walk off campus. And then they're in public safety land. And so, there should be some
I think it's fine as a goal. You just don't know how you determine those costs. Who says how much it's going to cost?
I mean, has public safety increased its staffing as a result of the opening of the Four Freedoms Park and the people it brings and other tourists? We've had more people coming to this island for a lot of reasons. So,
right, we have to talk to Riak about
so, I mean,
that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Also in place their own park ranger staff to control. I mean, they've got 4 full-time staff members. This facility for the purpose of patrolling.
Well, why don't we phrase it the way you usually do it at universities? They make a contribution towards.
How do you phrase that?
Just that they
Contribute.
They contribute. They contribute to the cost of necessary expansion of policing, transportation, and maintenance.
Okay. In addition to having their own security.
In addition to having their own security.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. Okay.
And then that gets worked out somewhere.
Okay. I mean, there is, I just want to get it out there, there is the community concern about Technion, and I like the idea of Technion coming, and most of us do, but there is a concern that it is, it is, anything having to do with Israel is is very often a kind of a point of contention and more of a threat. So we have that other issue of, maybe we should be asking for New York City.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's what we should be asking for. I agree with that. And I think we have to, that's a fair request of the city. We can ask Cornell's help in dealing with the city regarding this, but essentially we need to ask the city and the NYPD, to look at this issue. I think it's a very serious issue. So.
It becomes another potential target along a whole
Right.
lot of other targets.
It does, but it does raise the specter of that. I think it does. We have to.
I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying you need to have appropriate language.
Right.
What's the appropriate language, since I'm going to be writing it in here?
For our lawyer to tell me.
You can come up with language, Alan, just, at Cornell
Don't
provide.
ask me to come up with language. Somebody else can have.
I'll write the language. I can write the language for it. It's really that the city provide adequate security measures especially regarding,
We're asking for-
sensitivities regarding Technion.
Right.
And that Cornell assist in any way possible,
Yeah.
dealing with the city in these matters. That would be the language, okay?
Okay,
So-
that's on tape.
Yep. Then the next, we're talking about they remove all waste by barge with no removal truck through the sole street in the community. I guess, I don't know what the feasibility of that is. I guess that's my question. Oh, we skipped number 2, I'm sorry. They appointed underwrite the arm's length monitoring environmentalist to work hand in hand with the community to ensure its safety from all environmental impediments.
Something I
Was
put in
there-
too. I mentioned that.
Yeah, was there a response in their questions to that issue? Did they say they talked about having someone who could monitor, help with the construction
No,
part?
no.
They didn't talk about the environmental side of it,
We're
right?
asking for a specific environmentalist because of the special extra toxic load that we have in the community. We're asking for an independent environmentalist, not just somebody they had said, I really read it. Somewhere
Right.
here, they said that they would have.
An independent, you want somebody independent, not.
Yeah,
You want an environmental monitor, is it an environmental monitor?
An independent environmental monitor.
It's, I think you're looking much towards like the Second Avenue subway monitor,
That's correct.
have an independent.
An independent person that's
Right,
watching
okay.
out for the community.
Okay,
Um,
I folded that into one of my things too.
yeah, I'm okay, that's all right. We call it an independent environmental monitor. They remove all waste by barge with no removal truck through the sole street in the community.
And then that has to do with the toxicity, you know. We don't, the toxicity in the particulate matter, we don't need, and the extra trucking, the extra, fumes from the truck. But particularly the particulate matter.
There are standards for transporting that kind of stuff. So,
Right,
so.
right. So I talked to a geologist who was talking about trucking toxic waste.
No, I understand that, but they're a federal and state city standard. So I mean, this is not the only site in the city that has toxic and hazardous material. It may be something different. So the people on those blocks, what do they do? Since there's no margin,
Right.
there are laws that protect. I mean, I don't know whether that's feasible, and what about, to the extent, just saying to the extent feasible,
Okay.
okay?
Sure.
I mean, anything that goes by barge is a bonus, but we should just say so.
To the extent.
Well, I don't believe it is a bonus.
Okay, keeping in mind that,
That's
So-
not a bonus.
keeping in mind there's only one street, traffic concerns expressed by our neighbors in Queens, they must minimize all traffic through the community by alternate means such as barging and truck ferry. I think that's what you had language similar to that also, Larry?
Yeah, I actually put an amount because when I saw their presentation, I think they showed 3 different means of using the water, and I think they all took about 20 to 25% away from the truck count. So my resolution was that it be minimized by 25% the number of trucks through alternate means. So we can play around with it too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I,
I'm fine, I saw Larry's language. So it was fine.
okay.
I mean, I remember the presentation.
Yeah, you could say either minimum or approximately a minimum, like, you can put some language in there.
Right.
We can work that. I think what we're saying, there has to be, we're asking for a significant amount of this.
I
to
thought
be
they
dealt with
I
that, right?
thought they were talking about 50% reduction.
It depended upon the scenario, we had a number of scenarios.
I didn't think it was as low as 25%, I thought it was greater.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I think that when you took all 3 and you added them up, but I think my sense was that there were 3 that, each one would, they'd probably go with one of them.
So let's do this. Let's go back, let's go back through we'll go back to the questions later. That can be done, we can come up with a number that we think is representative, but also has to be realistic, okay? They conduct vigilant air quality monitoring for the island, the east side of Manhattan and western Queens.
I think we need, if we're gonna talk about monitoring air quality, I think we need to be specific as to where we want them to monitor. I think with throwing them into a realm that, you know, where the air quality might not be so good because of factors other than Cornell, and maybe we can limit the monitoring to the island, just to make sure that during construction and there's no significant increase.
I think you have to limit it to the island. I think there are too many opportunities for, I think you have to limit it to the island also. And if it's okay on the island, it's gonna be okay on the east side and on Long Island City.
I mean, if we're,
Yeah, because I think that's a valid point, because it seems to me that something else, there's another impact that could happen in Manhattan, or it could happen in western Queens that has nothing to do with this project.
Right.
But we're essentially asking them to monitor that air quality. I don't know that we can
The
say.
air quality problem is gonna happen on the island.
It has to be on the island, and it seems to me that's really what we're worried
And then
about.
it's gonna be carried by some air current someplace else. But you've got it, but if it's gonna happen on the island, you'll find that out first and you stop it.
and isn't that necessarily folded into the requirement of having them have an independent environmental monitor anyways? I mean, wouldn't the air quality also be
Yes.
responsibility?
You can fold that into it, we can just combine those
I
two.
agree, I
We
think we
can
should.
combine that under that.
I don't know, if I was in Turtle Bay or in Long Island City, right across from the project, I would want my air quality monitored.
But it's irrelevant if the problem is coming
But if someone,
from the island, and the
right.
island is where you gotta stop
we
it.
have-
say someone's burning number 6 fuel over in Manhattan, it has nothing to do with this project. Now we're saying they have to monitor, that's the problem you run into. You're asking them to monitor air quality in an area that's outside, quite honestly, I think of, what
Quite
we're
frankly,
here.
we build buildings all over the city. We build buildings next to one another where we have all kinds of environmental problems, and they'll monitor the air, but that's, they'll do it there.
I agree with Ellen's.
Here's the builder, here's what I'm thinking. Air blows in certain directions, okay, it may not be blowing our way. I mean, after September 11th, the Upper West Side didn't get, Brooklyn got the more air damage than we did.
But as long as they're monitoring it at the source, they'll know they'll know whether you have a problem at the source or not.
It's gotta come from
It's
here.
gotta come from.
So if they set up monitors on each side of the island, you're gonna see it, it's gonna come from one side or the other, it's gonna be affected. You can't just, I don't see how it can sort of transfer over to Queens or to Manhattan without it being captured here. Maybe it's possible, I don't know.
Anything is possible, but in the realm of reasonableness, I don't think we want to say that.
Who knows what's gonna be coming over from the Hunter College Kettering thing on that
Right.
garbage site.
That's right, we should have air monitoring for that if you really want.
All right, restoring, we'll fold that into, but we'll bring that into, we can put language about air quality, but we'll fold that into the environmental
Yeah.
monitor, okay? Restore any island infrastructure worn or damaged during construction to its original or better condition. I agree with that, I don't think we need to change that. They limit construction to from 9 to 5.
On weekdays. Ellen, on weekdays.
Weekdays.
I don't know if I totally agree with that. Most construction starts much earlier in the morning. And that puts a major expense on this project.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the DOB requirement is 7:30 and 3:30. They'll have to get an after-hours permit for 9 to 5. They were just not advocating one way or another, just saying what.
Right, the DOB is, what is,
DOB is 7:30 and 3:30. After-hours permits for 9 to 5, they would have an after-hours permit.
What about trucks though?
I think that's what we should be focusing
Okay.
on. That's what that really is about, is the trucking activity be limited, if any, to the 9 to 5 period.
And I can see limiting the trucking activity. I can't see
Yeah.
limiting the construction activity
yes,
itself.
especially
And if
DOBs has those
Right,
regulations in
and if
place.
they want to bring in a truck at 4:30 in the afternoon, so that materials are available for 7:30 the following morning, I mean, I think that's the way they'll plan their job.
Right.
But to change the way the construction industry works for this project, I think is not fair.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I mean, it would say at the very least limiting of the any construction, any trucking activity.
So limiting the trucking activity.
They can plan for that.
Yeah, trucking activity 9 to 5 on weekdays, is that what we're saying?
The only thing it's going to affect are the concrete trucks. And I'm not going to say make an exception for them, I'll just have to work it out that they come after 9 o'clock.
So we're making recommendations, we're not minding.
I know.
Well,
I'm just trying to be realistic for the island and for Cornell.
well, yeah, I mean, can you sneak a truck in quietly?
No,
Right, so you're gonna wake people up if you're.
I have no problem with the trucking.
He's fine with the saying 9 to 5 is fine.
Okay.
Trucking, we want the language to be trucking though, because
Right.
the DOB regulations are 7:30 to 3:30 and on construction, right? So we shouldn't be telling them to do something different than what is regulated by the city, right? Okay. Provide advance notice if any temporary changes will be made in construction schedule.
That fits into my construction coordinator liaison type person.
Right, so we can merge that with that. So the responsibility should be, or could be, such as, something like that. They ensure the continued operation of the helix leading from 36th Avenue Bridge to Main Street, from 36th Avenue Bridge to Main Street.
We could fold that into 6.
Right.
That's 4 rather than something.
They set up an ongoing community advisory board made up in part of RICC members.
Well, if this is going to be a resolution of the community, going to be of the community board, we want the community board participation in that as well.
Yep, and community board members, which Ellen helps us with there. Okay. They provide the community with a dedicated contact person for all questions and complaints. I think they said they were going to do that anyway, right? They agreed to do that. They implement security measures to ensure safety of Roosevelt Island residents during construction, and thereafter with special consideration for the sensitive nature of their areas of expertise. I think this is going to fold Technion. Basically, this Technion issue, we're going to fold that into this, right? They compensate the community for the extensive inconvenience by making a contribution of $250,000 to the community chest each year. I don't know. I mean, you have to tell me where that. It seems like I don't know where we can ask. Community board can ask
I don't see what it is for that.
for money like that. I don't know that it's.
Not,
I mean, we don't really. The community board has
not
a,
related to any of the impacts of the project. So
right.
you know, it's,
I don't know the community board can take a position that we say that they should require them to give money to a community chest. I mean, I'm uncomfortable with
So
that.
here's what we have consistently said, that to the extent that the Cornell campus puts pressure on the expenses that REAC has, and that are reimbursed, or, that REAC then will need to spend more money on the basic services for the island, and we get our public purpose fund from REAC. So every year they evaluate how much money they have to give us, and once they no longer have that money to, flexible enough to give us, it's gonna go away, and our basic services like the youth center will also go away with the public purpose.
but do we have any idea what services that REAC provides would be impacted by the project? Because
Also, we already have them contributing to security.
yeah, I mean, I'm concerned, and frankly, this should be a REAC. It should be something REAC should ask for if they believe that having the campus here is going to impact on its ability to provide services. Then REAC who has to yield part of the proposed Cornell site back to them should be asking for this, but I don't.
Well, the language we can put in then is really a request to REOC essentially to say they can't, essentially that the residents can't be penalized, you know, for expenses that are incurred in the REOC budget. We ask that not, you know, be sort of penalized.
But just to give historical context as to, I mean, I understand where this is coming from, just because as I understand the historical context of the island itself, is that every major development that has come onto the island, including here, Manhattan Park, the Octagon in the north, and now also related to the south, and it does, you're right, it does tie into REOC and their operations. They, as part of their development, have been asked, and they've agreed to give a monetary contribution for X amount of dollars per project for the purposes of what they're using it for for funding of various community programs, initiatives that are funneled through REOC and funneled for the Residents Association. So I think that's where they're coming from. I'm not advocating one right now, but I'm saying that's where the historical it's not an unusual thing.
Is that in perpetuity, or is that for a period of time?
One shot, I think they were one shot.
One shot.
And they were building on REOC property.
I mean, we're already asking them to contribute for all of the impacts that they're making due to the construction. And I don't think you can, I agree that REOC can ask them to have a negotiation, but I don't even think this belongs in our resolution.
Well,
It's something between REOC and Cornell, it's not the whole community board aid.
What we're asking is recommendations. So here's the thing, if we say, well, we're asking this here, and then Cornell negotiates that away, and so they don't actually give that, and that puts more pressure on REOC, and REOC does a bad job of negotiating. We have no direct control over the negotiation by REOC.
I don't think this is an appropriate recommendation for the board
We've
to make.
never on the board asked for some financial contribution of an applicant with an action pending before the board, unless you know, it hasn't been financially, unless the proposal generated a specific impact. And often we ask them to do stuff on his own property, but I don't think we've ever asked, you know, a developer who had an architect who had or let's put something more familiar, you know, the owner of a restaurant who was up before the community board for a sidewalk cafe. You know, we've never asked him to, you know, give money to the precinct council or something like that. I think that's really beyond our scope. Now, I think, Ellen, you should be aware that regardless of what the community board includes in its resolution, the RICC is not precluded from continuing to press its own agenda and forward those comments to the City Planning Commission, to the council, and speak and so and so. So,
yeah, that might, I mean, and that might be the best way to handle it, because I think you're going to find it on the board members, myself included, that are going to be uncomfortable saying that we should ask any entity to give money to a specific organization. I think a lot of members are going to have to take issue with that. That's my own view.
Well, then if, just to preserve though the comment that is in there, then I would suggest that we do with your original proposition, Nick, that we include, you know, the recommendation that REOC engage in negotiations for the purposes of this contribution, or that we encourage them to, however we want to preface it.
I think it shouldn't be a specific amount as much as it should be the idea that residents shouldn't be paying. They shouldn't bear a penalty. All right, shouldn't, you know, be removed. That, you know, REOC should be either mindful or that we ask them to make sure they look at it. But I'm very uncomfortable citing a specific amount. In principle, I understand the concept. If we can come up with language that represents that, I'm okay with that. But I'm not going to ask for. I would be very uncomfortable asking for any specific amount.
I don't think there should be a specific amount. I mean, I'm not even sure I want to see the recommendation, but if it's something to the effect that recommendation that REOC negotiate with Cornell for some contribution based on any inconveniences that the project is going to cost.
Yeah, I would make it broader language than that, even in the sense that just that they should, that we would have a concern that the residents should not bear the cost of something. It's not. We're not going to say that someone should negotiate with someone else for something else. I don't know if I put that language in there, to be honest.
Well, I agree, thank you for helping.
But that's what, I mean, I'm just saying we're on.
I don't like any of it.
Yeah.
I just think it's wrong. I mean, there's a lot of work with institutions in the city and developers in the city. I've never come across.
But we don't have to, my point is the language can be directed at REOP, not at Cornell. We're not saying to Cornell, you have to do this. We're saying, but this is a concern by the community, and this is something that should be considered. That's all in a principle, that REOP should take note of it. And that, I mean, that would be my view, but not a specific amount or anything like that. So, anyway, let Ellen, I mean, I'll try, I can draft somewhere. If Ellen, you want to put something together, I send it out, but essentially just to address this issue that you know, this concern that the community not suffer or bear any cost.
Well, the board recognizes that the community
should not bear any cost.
Any cost associated with construction.
Right.
And impacts from the construction.
Right.
And I think we've already covered that. But yeah, if you want to say it again.
Yeah, and that budget, we could even, you could say that REOP not, you know, that the funds not be removed, sort of REOP's budget that would be normally.
Well, then you're getting into specifics.
Yeah.
I think that I'm sure you could write general language.
Yeah, I'm okay writing general language on that. I agree with that.
I would agree with the caveat that the rig itself, as Larry's proposed, be, I mean, not saying there's any requirement, but strongly encourage the rig itself to separately write their own direct letter to.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. We can just say that we strongly encourage Rick to write, you know, their right to their concerns or whatever language. Make a request.
Because then it is part of the record, so that when it goes in front of both planning commission and then it goes in front of city council, they have that they reference to, they can use that for the negotiations process.
Should we be making a recommendation that another entity do something?
We don't even have to say that. We can say we understand. Rick.
I just think we've already said that Cornell has to contribute through all the costs and impacts in terms of the security and the transportation and so on down the line. I don't know why we have to say it again. And I think it's up to each individual organization that wants to go talk to Cornell to go talk to them. Or, as Larry points out, anybody who wants to can appear at the public hearing. And so can Rick as an organization appear at the public hearing.
I guess I just don't see why it is a problem for us to acknowledge the fact that Rick has already expressed it.
Maybe we can fold that into the report language rather than into the.
We don't have to reckon. We can encourage them. I'm okay with the idea of what Jeff says, which is essentially acknowledging that Rick has brought up an issue about additional costs, and that we encourage them to pursue this.
Just listening to Larry for a second, I don't think it belongs in a resolution. We're also doing a report as well as a resolution.
Yeah, I mean, the report will be, you know, I mean, I've written a report without the whereas, because when you have a whole slew of report with a whole slew of whereas, it gets difficult to read. You know, it's sort of like the consideration of why the resolution is being adopted.
I think
so
it's part of the context for the resolutions, and we say it appropriately. I'm fine with that. I just don't think it belongs in a resolution.
I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's we'll write up some language, and then we can figure out how we want to look at it, and, you know, decide. Let the board kind of weigh in on how they want to do that. That's probably the best way to do it. Okay.
I don't want to be one person against four.
No, you won't. You're not. I mean, and your points are well taken, David. I'm not saying you're. I think we should have language in there on both sides, so the board can look at, you know, how they want to do it, how we want.
David, I think you're providing a balance, here, and I appreciate your attention. 13.
They replace a tree every time it's demolished. Is that reasonable?
I mean, I think that's a tough one because
I just don't know how many trees we're talking about in terms of where they are and where you're going to put them.
And you know, do you know, there's always the argument. Well, if you tear down a 40-inch caliber tree, because it has to be replaced. You can't replace a tree, a 40-inch caliber with the same tree, because, so, I mean, if you wanted to say something to the effect that to the maximum extent possible, replace all trees removed.
I think that's fine, but the city also has a tree planting program. I mean, you have to plant a certain number of trees when you do a building.
But that's on
It's on
sidewalks.
sidewalks, so I
They're
guess
talking
we're
about
not,
having a tree nursery.
and we're talking about the tree.
Weren't you talking about having a tree nursery? Yes. I thought so.
Yeah, but that's, that may be just temporary, you know, I think some of the open space was gonna be, some of this open space was gonna be temporarily used.
I think your language is fine.
Okay.
Larry, you gonna take care of that?
Sure.
All right.
I mean, it's sad, we have a lot of very old sturdy trees that will go away because of construction, so we were kind of hoping to be able to save those trees, but,
Well, we don't know that,
you know,
we
you
don't know
can't
that, we
save them,
don't,
you can't save them, so.
you know, I think responsible design professionals with a responsible client are gonna try to save, not all of them, but those that they can save. And I think we have to rely to some extent on that kind of a good faith relationship to the environment.
All right, Larry, you comfortable with writing that
Yes.
language?
Yes.
Okay. They provide an elevator
And I
to,
think you should put in that they should, to the extent possible, they should save,
Okay.
yeah, that should be in there,
Save-
that say wherever possible, the trees,
to the extent.
to the, yeah.
That doesn't mean to save a tiny little tree, but some of these big old.
They provide an elevator to the pedestrian walkway at 59th Street Bridge.
I'd like to drop that. I think
Like
it's
to-
economic, it's the economics of such, to do that and the process that would be necessary to do that. This is probably something that would, best be taken up by the city, but I think while it's a very desirable idea, I think it should be in the board resolution. I wouldn't propose it, I wouldn't support it in the board resolution.
I agree.
Jeffrey?
I guess I'm not really sure. I understand where Larry's coming from. If this is something that Cornell has expressed that they're interested in at least exploring and pursuing anyways, I don't see.
Do we have a response on that issue? Did they come back and say they would look at it? Or
We
is
said
it-
we
looking at
committed to do a study.
What is that? I'm sorry, what's it?
The
Let me hear
commitment
again.
was to do a study?
Okay, so why don't we simply
Why don't we
say,
say they would do a study? And
yeah,
and as I said earlier,
I'm okay with that.
They're doing a
as I
study
said
and
earlier,
contributing it if they want to, but I
Yeah.
don't think we can mandate it.
Yeah, I agree with
well,
David on
what
that.
we can do and what's not atypical is where Cornell has agreed to certain things, we leave it in and we say as Cornell has agreed to in either a letter dated or in whatever, those should definitely be in, because it adds
Right.
greater weight.
Right, exactly, that's a good point, Larry. Okay,
Listen, this is in everybody's best interest because it's only 3 blocks, it's only a 3-block walk to the hospital over there. So if there was a pedestrian walkway over the bridge, it would be an easy walk for somebody, especially if
I'm
they're living
not
right near the
disagreeing
bridge.
that it's a good idea,
Okay.
but to include it as a requirement for Cornell, I believe in, I think it's, as I said, it's very, very difficult project. Probably would be cheaper to put the floating bridge across the East River that opened up to allow Oatsville.
but, all right, so Larry, we're gonna
Well, I
have,
think the point that Jeff made is that, Cornell, that Cornell has agreed, does a study to examine the feasibility of elevator to the bridge as stated in their letters, like that, so and so.
yep, okay. I'm all right with that, everyone okay? All right, we move on to, they provide disaster relief location for natural disasters and emergencies.
which I understand
I-
they've agreed to too.
Right, they've agreed to do that?
So if they've agreed to it, I can put it in and cite that they've agreed to it.
Is that right? Does that sound correct? I thought I remember reading something
Okay.
like
We're
that.
trying
or
to
hearing
sort
it.
out exactly what we can do.
What's that?
We're meeting with the city to sort out exactly what we can be and what we can do. For instance, the land is a B zone, so exactly what you can be in a B zone is a bit unclear, so we have a meeting to sort through those.
We may not be in a B zone after Fluker changes the.
Well, it can be language that says appropriate to any, sort of rezoned,
Well, there's.
Yeah, if it was an
emergency zones.
If it was an A zone, it would be even worse, because the city is not very much at the moment pursuing the idea of sheltering in place in A zone.
Right, and
So
I can appreciate
it's the opposite
that.
of what they're looking for.
Yeah, no, obviously if it's an A zone, it would seem to me to be inappropriate, right?
And
So,
there are
So
no-
they're
I don't
sifting
think
through
we
that.
can, I don't, that's the point, I think we have to put language in there if we're gonna ask for this, which should be, that say, take
Appropriate as zone.
appropriate as zone, is really the way.
And quite frankly, I think this is something that the board would be willing to say that Cornell and Rick are studying this together jointly.
Right.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, then they work with the community CERT team, the Office of Emergency Management, the Islands Public Safety Department, the REOC to develop an effective evacuation plan for the community. I mean, it seems that goes unsaid, but we should say it anyway. That's, I'm fine with that. I think that's. They assure public access to South Point throughout the development process.
Yes. Can I speak to that? So, and to give context, because there has been recently on the island with development of Fort Freedoms Park, the park itself had erected a fence across without any pretext. And I think that I would like to see some sort of recommendation, or that the campus not be enclosed, or that there not be some sort of physical barrier or delineation, as like a fence, for example, be erected. And I don't think that's their intent anyways, but I would think that that would be a fairly useful recommendation, and especially given the history that's been going on the island itself. And in conjunction with this comment, I would like to see something like that.
Is there any circumstance where they'd be unable to do that though, where it was based on either construction or something like that? I'm just thinking.
What are we talking about, the access to the park or the access to the campus? Because they're really two separate issues.
Right.
And we should probably write them as two separate requirements.
Right.
They've indicated that should they find marching to be feasible, depending on the method they choose, it may be necessary at times to close off one of the roads, but they would not entirely prevent access to South Point Park.